Congrats on winning that Best Editor award.
Oh, thanks. Remind me what video that was again.
The Macbeth movie? The one you released last year.
Has it really been that long since I last uploaded a video?
Yeah, dude, you haven't posted anything at all this year. What's up with that?
I just haven't had a reason to make new videos lately. Most of these film projects I make are for school assignments, and, now that school's out, I don't really have any more assignments to base them off of.
Well, whatever happened to the Impossible Final video, or whatever that was?
We don't talk about the Impossible Final video.
Well, if you're going to scrap projects like that, I think you should at least try and redirect that energy into something else. It's summer. You have plenty of time to post something.
What would that even be? School's out, so I don't have any assignments to go off of.
Well, let's see here. It's summer, so I guess you could talk about what happened this summer I know about. Oh, duh. D-Day, random thing. This year was the 81st. June 6th, 1944. It was a joint British, American, Canadian, and French invasion of France in the Normandy region.
I thought I deleted these scenes a long
The
time
invasion actually
ago.
happened on...
I remember this one. This one was recorded in
with paratroopers taking
the
off
A-Push,
and
the
landing
A-Push
in
classroom.
France
Yeah,
behind.
I remember now.
Bridges like Pegasus Bridge, different causeways behind beaches between, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Stored. Operation Overlord happened June 6, 1944, the actual invasion, but actually started June 5th with paratroopers and everything entering, which is, fascinating, by the way. If you've read Lost Bay and the Brothers, you'll know about this. Yeah, it's, it was a turning point in the war, where we won versus Germany. Yeah, a lot of fascinating stuff.
Hang on. I'll call you back, alright? I'll call you back.
But come on, man. You haven't even talked about,
One more time. From the very beginning.
Okay, what if you end up with a big rural state, and the farmers are being elected to the legislature, and the legislature decides that pine cones are legal tender. That means that if I loaned $5 of gold, I would have to accept being repaid in pine cones. Okay, now of course I'm not going to use pine cones, but basically, you know what? If you go to the White House and want to talk to the president, you ring the doorbell back in 1801. Jefferson will answer the door, probably in a robe and slippers sometimes. All right, he will hear you out. All right, try doing that today. Yeah, jump the fence and see what's going to happen to you. Talk about a takedown. Hell yeah. Well, that's what Livingston and Monroe here are going to do. They meet with the French foreign minister, guy that we have been familiar with before. This guy right here, French foreign minister named Talleyrand. Does he look like a guy you just want to punch? Me a little bit. He looks pompous. He's probably hiding a hickey somewhere in his throat. Ooh, I never thought of this. Mr. Haindfield, you are so immature. Oh, the possibilities. Oh, the possibilities. Oh, man. How old are you, Mr. Haindfield? Yeah, I know. I'm just having a little bit of fun here. But again, Talleyrand. Can you guys smell that? Was it just me? God, I hope I don't smell me. No. Do you guys smell that? What I smell here is irony. I smell irony here. And third is a characterization that Lewis and Clark make about this area called Louisiana. They called it the Great American Desert. What do you do with deserts? You avoid them, right? Or you build casinos there, I suppose. You avoid them or you build casinos in the middle of the desert. Okay? How's that for a Supreme Court decision? How's that for your first Supreme Court case in APUSH? Yeah, it is that big of a deal. And it's a bigger deal even for John Marshall. Because on this day in 1803, he revealed his divinity. That's right. He revealed his divinity. He pulled this power out of his arse and made it sound pretty good to people. At first, some were skeptical, but after they read the decision, they all kind of said, you know what? It's not in the Constitution, but he's right. This power has to be there in the courts. The judges have to be these referees. Because we can't rely on the players to call their own fouls. In 1835, John Marshall ascended into heaven, his black robe flailing about as he entered heaven. And today he sits at the right hand of Jesus Christ. You have God, you have Jesus Christ, and to his right is John Marshall. You don't need to genuflect when you say his name, but you do need to give him the respect that he deserves. And so from this day onward, you will refer to him as the man. There is only one, the man. So you can call him the man. You can call him John the Man Marshall. John Marshall the man. Doesn't matter. He deserves that amount of respect here. He is God's lawyer, by the way. So, that's something. Okay? And yes, I do have the word right underneath the eraser right now. British impressments. Life in the British Navy was difficult. They suffered from a lot of what we call it AWOL. Desertions. There we go. Desertions. A British naval vessel pulls into a port, and they will always lose British sailors. They will take off because life is just so difficult in the British Navy. So there's a shortage of manpower in the British Navy, and thus when they seize an American ship, they're going to see these American sailors as potential British. I just used the word crap. It's been one of those days. Oh, crap. I turned the video off and I sat here for 2 minutes trying to think of the word that I just used. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget it again. Anyway, deserters, right? And so they're going to kidnap these American sailors and impress them into British service. When it's headed for France, you seize the ship, you seize the cargo, you seize the sailors. That's how they're doing it. And so in 1807, we have an incident here called the Chesapeake Affair. The Chesapeake is an American ship, so we underline the names of ships. We don't call ships her anymore, for those of you, or she, who did that in your reaction paper. We don't use those kinds of gender specific pronouns for inanimate objects. If you write a book someday, you can call them whatever you want, but not in these papers. The Chesapeake was an American ship leaving a port in Virginia. It was stopped by the British ship called the Leopard. The Leopard demanded to be let on board, to be searched for contraband. The American sailor of the Chesapeake said, "Hell no, go away." The Leopard then fired shots at the Chesapeake and killed 3 Americans and wounded 18 sailors. And all this took place within sight of the Virginia coastline. Americans could see this naval battle take place. And it's similar to, if you guys have a dog who's in the house, maybe looking out the window, and it sees another dog. What angers your dog more than anything else? It's not seeing the dog. It's watching that dog come onto your dog's property and taking a dump. That will just drive your dog ape crap, right? And that's here what the British have done. They basically have come onto our territory and they've taken a major dump. So, success for the Monroe administration, right? Yes, of course. America. Hoorah. Hoorah, right? Then we have something called here the John Quincy got 13 votes, Andrew Jackson got 7, and Crawford got 4. 13 is exactly half. Okay. 24 states. Half would be 12. Half plus 1 is required, so 13 states. And he gets it on the very first ballot. Says Andrew Jackson. Say his supporters. There's something fishy about this. What the hell just happened? What the hell did they talk about in that meeting? Something's not right here. And then things make sense when John Quincy, president-elect, announces that Henry Clay will be his Secretary of State. And then it all makes sense. It all makes sense for Andrew Jackson. Because let me show you something here. We have John Quincy Adams. His Secretary of State is Henry Clay. Okay? Remember what John Quincy's previous post was? He was Secretary of State to Monroe, right? Monroe's previous job was Secretary of State to James Madison. Okay? Who was Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of State, do you think? Madison, exactly. Okay? So actually I could go back earlier here, and Thomas Jefferson actually was George Washington's Secretary of State, but the point here is there's a stepping stone here. And so what John Quincy has just done is made Henry Clay his heir or his successor. And that's what Andrew Jackson is going to complain about, and he will call this the corrupt bargain, that this election was stolen from him, and the American people had been ignored. What a crime this is. And Jackson will talk about this corrupt bargain from 1824 and then all the way to 1828 when he basically gets a rematch against John Quincy Adams and then really kicks his butt. Okay? He's going to stop the tax money going into the Bank of the United States. Whoops, should have been yellow. Shoot. You know what I just thought I'm going to try to do here? If I color this blue, and then I put some red, does it turn purple? I don't think it does it? Ah, okay. That curiosity has been satisfied. Thank you very much. Thank you for indulging me. So somebody comes to me and they want money to buy a farm. I'm not going to ask them, hey, do you know anything about farming? Not at all. Why would I do that? Okay? This is business. He'll get the loan, he'll make money, and then he'll pay me that interest back. Some guy says, you know what, I have this idea to create a 5-legged horse. But I need some money, though, to do the genetic research. And I'll say, all right, sounds like a good idea. Because a 5-legged horse will be faster than a 4-legged horse. Okay? Okay. Let's switch gears now and talk about an event in the last year of the Jackson administration. And we have to go down to Texas for that part of the story. Oh, my goodness. I just said that out loud on a video, didn't I? Oh, dear. What's going to happen to me? I don't know. Anyway. All right. They're very much, this is part and parcel of patriotism, right? Nationalism. Hoorah, right? I will write his name again here in case you didn't write it down before. Okay, he goes back to consult with his own government, as ambassadors do periodically, and he's finishing, his report about all the things that he's seen and heard in the United States. And at the end of the meeting, he goes, "Well, by the way, actually, there's one more thing, and you guys are going to find this so funny. I found it funny myself. But imagine this guy, his superiors, Prime Minister, President Polk called me into the White House, and he wanted to talk about Oregon, and he proposed that we divide Oregon at 49 degrees north, and I thought that was a silly idea, so I took it upon myself to cordially reject his offer of 49 degrees. And his superiors said, Polk said that? 49 degrees? Yeah, indeed he did, sir. And Prime Minister's like, well, that's actually a pretty good offer. It's a pretty generous offer to us. We actually will end up getting more of Oregon with the 49 degrees than anywhere else of dividing the line. That's a great idea. You should accept this on our behalf. And Pakenham's like, oh shit, right? No. Pakenham, yeah, I thought it was a good idea too. But I want to make sure with you guys first. So I'll go back and I'll tell Mr. Polk that we are interested in his 49 degrees. He's in total CYA mode at this point, right? You guys know what CYA mode means? Well, I'll look it up. Okay. I guess if you believe that, well, whether or not you believe that, I guess would depend on whether you're wearing maybe your your conspiracy goggles, right? And there's also that fear of England extending its reach into North America. So plenty of evidence that the U.S. was the instigator in this particular war. That's not to apologize for taking the land. I mean, we stole it fair and square, right? Hoorah, America. Anyway, if we're going to evaluate Polk's record here after the end of his first term, this is where we are at. This is a formatting error. I did not mean to give you a U with an umlaut. This actually should be a check mark, check mark, check mark, and a check mark. You got the lower tariff. You got the new Independent Treasury Act. You got the Oregon question settled. And by God, he got California. But by the 1850s, the United States is concerned that Hawaii might fall into the hands of the British. As Hawaii becomes more important economically in that trans-Pacific trade, the concern for the United States again is that the British might be able to take control of it. And so the U.S. tries to beat the British to the punch. Right? Not the Hawaiian punch. Just the punch to grab the... I just thought of that. I'm a marvel. Wow. Anyway. And of course, with that growth, leads to this, right? Hoorah. All right, this is the fourth installment of the Unit 7 videos. And this is the prelude. So this is really the years that's going to lead right up to the Civil War. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Spoiler alert. Damn it. I hate when that happens. My apologies. Disregard. reverse, rewind, didn't say anything. The losers in that election were the anti-slavery people. And they complained to Walker, hey, you know, this process isn't fair. And Walker says, well, what you guys have to do is you have to participate in this election. You guys can't be sitting on the sidelines every damn time and then complain when you don't win. Get off the bench, play the game, otherwise shut the hell up. Okay? Alright, so now we're about 40 minutes into this video, and now I think it's time to kill some people, don't you? Yeah, hoorah! Exactly. Alright, so, right, I gotta hand it to Congress this time. So they thought these things out. They're not gonna let Johnson get around through the Weasley actions in this document called the Constitution. Humbug, right? No way in hell. They're gonna set him through, and they're gonna push this through Congress. They're gonna push it down Andrew Johnson's throat as well. Now, of course, legal questions. I already mentioned some of those already. Okay, so let's say that his business has done really good now. And he's mowing in a neighbor's lawn, and the neighbor has a young kid who just loves Grant. Just loves Ulysses Grant, right? And every day this kid comes out to greet Grant whenever he's mowing the lawn. Okay? But one day as this kid is running out to say hi to U.S. Grant here, a rock shoots up from the bottom of the mower, hits the kid in the head, and kills him. Yeah, I'll give you a moment to kind of, if you need to pause the video to contemplate that, then go ahead and do so. But I'll move on, though, and then probably guess that the parents will probably bring a lawsuit against Grant mowing, right? And they might have the picnics, they might have the barbecues, the gatherings periodically. They can go and just have that human contact with somebody other than their families. A place to go to complain about their families, complain about their wives, complain about the bugs, complain about the weather, complain about government, about Indians, or whatever. Now, there are different groups of critics that we'll talk about here. One group are the socialists. Of course, they're believing what a socialist is. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and while I have your attention, let's talk about communism. How's that for an ink color change? So Bellamy's, rallying cry here is, if we just make the tough choices now, I see us having a much better future 100 years from now. But we just have to believe that we can do this. Okay? I have not read the book of Year 2000. I can tell you pretty much that it didn't happen. I think it's safe to say, I guess that's the beauty of writing fiction. You can turn out whatever outcome you want and justify it however you want, but reality often has a veto over those very novel ideas there, right? But at least it's getting people to at least think differently, that perhaps there are better ways to organize society. You read this Great American Desert. Of course, you have certain imagery in your head. Okay, you might have cactus. It just might be a barren and an arid land. But essentially, what do you do with deserts? Well, number one, either you avoid them, or number two, you build casinos. Right? Fetterman's Massacre takes place right up here. Okay, Fort Kearny. And I think this map was made by a European. I don't know if you can see why I would say that. Yeah, right there. Misspelling of massacre. I have to think it's a European thing, but I don't know. They have the Powder River Country. They have the Black Hills. They have the forts closed down. And they won't give up any more land. And they can't be forced to. The treaty cannot be changed because they will never get 75% of them to agree to the change. So they have what they want forever. Dun, 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 right? Number two, the location that he eventually finds ultimately becomes Fort Sturgis. Right? You know it because of the bicycle. They're the bicycle. Yeah, tell that to a Hell's Angel. Nice bicycle. No, it's because the biker rallies every summer, but also it is known to be a spreader of COVID, in case you didn't know. Super spreader event in the summer of 2020. So, again, the government doesn't want a war here. So the U.S. government is going to do what it does often: approach the Sioux, ask to buy the Black Hills. Okay? To think of how absurd that is, imagine a businessman, let's say Bezos here, right? Amazon. He goes to Pope Francis, says, hey, how much do you want for the Vatican? Right? Is General Terry, and one of his assistants here is Custer. Okay? And their orders are to push any Sioux resistance back, push it to the west. Coming from Fort... shoot. Yeah, let's see here. It's going to be on this side, right about there. This is Fort Fetterman. Yes, you get massacred, you get your fort named after you. Then they will offer you an amount for your crop. And so railroad track, okay? I go to the first grain elevator here. I try to sell my corn, and he offers me 10 cents a bushel. I say that's crap. I should get at least 15. This is a great crop. Best crop I've had in ever. So sorry, that's what I have. I said, well, we'll forget it. Okay? I'm going to take my wagon full of corn 6 miles east on the railroad tracks to grain elevator B in the next town over. Okay? That guy who grades and weighs my crop, and he says, I will give you 8 cents. And I said, you got to be kidding me. This is the best crop ever. First guy offered me 10 cents. Guy B says, well, then go back. I said, well, screw that. I'm going to go down to grain elevator C. 10 more miles. This guy's going to offer me 6 cents. I am so pissed at this point. What I didn't know at the time is that all three of these grain elevators are owned by the same railroad. These were all owned by Union Pacific Railroad. And as soon as I left grain elevator A, he telegraphed the guy here saying, yeah, Haindfield's coming. I gave him 10 cents and he was mean to me. Lowball him. I'd be happy to, says B. Right? I get their 8 cents a bell and I call him some nasty names. In fact, I scorn him. Yeah, I scorned him. All right? And I made the mistake of telling him where I was going next, and he telegraphs this guy and says, lowball, that's SOB. And he does. So now I'm ready to give my middle finger to both C and B and say, all right, fine. I'm going to go back to A. All right? And I'm going to ask for 10 cents a bushel, and they'll say, screw you. You're not 4 cents a bushel. I'm like, God blessed. Right? I can't get a break. Everybody's out against me. When you hear that the bank down the street is going bankrupt, those who use the bank, up the street are not concerned about their bank going bankrupt. And so the customers in the good bank now go to the bank and they demand their money that they're going to take home and put it under their mattresses or in their coffee cans or buried in the backyard under the doghouse or whatever. And that created what we call run-ons, bank run-ons. We will see a lot of these at the beginning of the Great Depression as well. So even banks that were sound, that were safe, that were financially secure, are going to see a loss of their deposits, which means that they're going to have to call in loans, and that caused, did I just say cause it? I said caused a restriction in the economy. That Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive, no one doubts. That Wilson was a progressive. But Taft has both his supporters and the naysayers, his critics. an extra 60 pounds. And it goes back to this whole political thing there, that he was just so unhappy being president that he found solace, he found refuge in eating. Teddy Roosevelt, by contrast, is a guy who is bounded by action. He's a guy of action. I think I have mentioned that before. He'll stretch the limits of the office. He will accumulate more powers to the president. And what am I talking about? That kind of goes to the stewardship legalist, doesn't it? Crap. Yeah, I'm talking from memory here, so oops. Way to go, Haindfield. Yeah. I'll come back to that in class. I'll touch up on that as when I go back and review my notes. Sorry about that. I don't want to talk anymore and lead you guys down a rabbit hole of misinformation. So let's just move on, shall we? So as far as the progressives in the House goes, this is the third strike for Taft. He is not one of them, and they're going to look for another candidate when 2012 comes around, somebody who is more progressive. The muckrakers had created enough outrage and uproar. Wow, damn, Haindfield, what the hell? Outrage and uproar over he's interested in running as a progressive. But before he throws his hat into the ring, he's going to have a conversation with Teddy Roosevelt, who's still the most well-known former president. He's still the most well-known progressive. And La Follette asked Roosevelt, hey, dude, are you going... No, he didn't call him dude. Didn't mean that. Mr. President, are you interested in running for the Republican nomination in 1912? We can't allow Taft to be renominated. We have to do something here that's going to help the progressive cause. And you're the man, Roosevelt. Yes, I know that's a sacrilege. John Marshall's the man. We all know that. But La Follette's, he could be just a denier. I don't know. But he's going to very closely. The leader of the parliamentary system is the prime minister. Okay, he is a member of the legislature. Okay, his cabinet about. All right, that's a lot of money, but again, we're borrowing that every year for the last 10, 15, 20 years. So, yeah, that's nothing, right? That's nothing. Easy. All right, economic mobilization is a big piece of how we're going to fight and win this. Oh, shoot, sorry. Spoiler alert. Plug your ears if you don't want to hear it. 3, 2, 1. Yes, the U.S. wins World War I. Hoorah, right? An act of patriotism to go without steak or hamburger one day a week. The Food Administration also created cookbooks that specialized in how to use leftovers. Okay? Much like I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Not going to go there. By 30% early on, it was a wildly popular program, or I don't know what we would call it. It was a very popular thing to do. I mean, a thing. How? Yeah, that's a great word, Haindfield. Well, I don't know what else to call it. Short deviation here from the notes, but when the Supreme Court heard the arguments against the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, in 2012. Whew. Yeah, I remember 1912 fondly. 2012. His goal when it comes to government, he said that if government went away, people wouldn't notice for a long time. That was his hope for government. The government would not be too much involved in society, that if it went away, people wouldn't notice. Okay? Oh, government's gone? What? Didn't even know it, right? Life went on without government. That's kind of his ideal government here. Pro-union law here. Remember, Yellow Dog contracts would fire union employees for making a contract that they would not join a union. Oops, just jumped one. Remember, this is in response to the Spanish Civil War. that's going to make the Neutrality Act, the Neutrality Act of 1935 apply to civil wars as well. The Neutrality Act of 1937. Looking through my notes here, and I don't see Neutrality Act of 1937. What the heck did I do with it? I know it existed. What the hell? You guys can look it up. Why can't I not? Huh. Probably buried in my notes somewhere and I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, well. Let's hope the Neutrality Act of 39 is in my notes. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Neutrality Act of 1939, I'll skip the one from 37, but 39, communism. He talked about this worker revolt, this inevitable clash between the workers and, well, I guess jump over here. Proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. Oh boy. Crap, I don't know. You can figure that out. The proletariat, that's the working class. The bourgeoisie are the landowners. Marx talked about this clash of these two groups, that all human history has been a clash between. But you'll find many of the same efforts that you saw in World War I as far as conservation of food goes. All right, sorry for that distraction. Telemarketers. Oy vey. I don't know where I was talking about with the Food Administration. Okay. I started in Los Angeles, but spread to other large cities across the United States. And really what they were attacking was the extravagant dress by some of these Latinos. And these were called the zoot suits. Right. This is a picture of the zoot suit. Notice it looks much like a police uniform. I'm kidding. This isn't the zoot suit. Almost got you guys, didn't I? Now, I won't tell you what happens in September 1945, but it will be climactic. Ha 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 ha. Right? So, if you have any questions, just give me a holler in class. I will start with something called the PTO, which does not mean paid time off. Rather, it means the Pacific Theater of Operations. I don't think it's ES. I think it's just S. Still open to the public, I believe. There's some areas there you can go and visit if you ever want to. I have not, because I don't like looking at just gardens and flowers and stuff. Nevertheless, it's there. And here we have the first. And the Americans here say that it's a waste of our resources to attack Germany where it doesn't really help us win the war. And so, if you want to get old, bravado about it, Americans, we're going to smack the guy right in the nose. Barroom fight, bam, make the guy bleed. And Britain's like, no, we want to punch him in the kidneys. We want to punch him in the back of the head. We want to dance around the bar until he tires out. It's like, that's a waste of time, right? Using warfare strategies that are not expected by the larger power. All right. Sometimes I describe this as doing more sneaky bastard things. We're not playing fair. All right. Kamikazes is one for each of the victors. Will have their own zone. One for each victor, and then one for France. All right. Ba-dum-bum. Number 2, and he just made sure that a communist won all of those particular elections. Okay, so he would say that he did keep his promise. He did hold free and fair elections. He just disputed the election results. Sound familiar? Right? And so May 8th was when the Germans surrendered to the Soviet Union, and that is why May 8th is Victory in Europe Day. And there was much rejoicing. There was, actually. But again, there's also the realization that part of the war's over, but there's still going to be the slog of going after Japan. and knowing what kind of fight the Japanese are going to put up as their homeland is invaded. Labor union says we will go on strike in 80 days, and now you begin the clock. And that still gives them almost 3 months here. Damn motorcycles. God, I hate them. Yeah, everyone, what the hell? Right, yeah, I heard a yeah, never mind. They did have integration there. The Air Force was a new branch. Not a big deal for them. It was the U.S. Army, though, that dragged its feet until after the Korean War, and actually until Dwight Eisenhower was president. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Eisenhower becomes president here, coming up. I won't tell you when, so it'll still be suspense, but we will have a President Eisenhower, in case you're wondering. But I won't tell you if this Eisenhower is the same Eisenhower from World War II. I'll let you think about that for a little bit longer. All right, December 1949, Chiang flees to Taiwan, moves his government there, the Republic of China, whereas in October of 49, we have the People's Republic of China, PRC, which I affectionately call PRIC. I guess that's not so affectionate. I should take that back. That sounds kind of creepy. Anyway, I just choose to call People's Republic of China PRIC. How about that? Oh, please don't take offense. Okay? And basically, Chiang ends up surrendering the mainland to... Now, the second responsibility of the CIA, though, is to do covert actions. Covert actions, or things that I call sneaky bastard things. These are a realization that sometimes we just need to do things on the down low, do things secretly that might accomplish a particular policy objective without getting into the big military, the big problems with foreign countries. And this is the story that really is going to launch Richard Nixon's political career. He decides to pursue an accusation made by a guy here named Whittaker Chambers. Whittaker Chambers was an editor of Time magazine, a magazine that you can still buy in bookstores today. He did the literary section, and he had been a communist going back to probably the early 1920s. He's an American, but he was an American communist, and he believed that communism offered a better future. It offered a better way to organize societies. This is a guy who had seen poverty, who grew up in poverty, and he was tired of the disparity of wealth, and he thought communism offered a better approach to do that. So he became a communist. He joined the American Communist Party. At some point in the late 30s, Whittaker Chambers grew a conscience. He began to hear about all the mass executions going on in the Soviet Union. He has a change of heart. He finds God. He's converted. He takes up his religion again, and he tries to make good by informing the government of his former participation, but he also began to identify other people in the U.S. government who he knew to be communists. And one of the ones that he identified was this guy named Alger Hiss. Alger Hiss had held several positions in the U.S. government. This is a guy who's well educated. He graduated from some Ivy League college. He jumped around to different positions, as I mentioned. He was one of FDR's advisors at Yalta. And when you combine that, his position there at Yalta, with this Red Scare, kind of alarm bells should have been going off with those who heard about Chambers' accusations. Nobody wanted to believe Whittaker Chambers, it seemed like. Here's a poor guy, not much respect given to him. He was a college dropout, in fact. He might have been a high school dropout. No, I think he was a college dropout. Versus an Ivy Leaguer. It's like, well, Chambers, obviously, he's a communist, so of course he's lying about it. But Richard Nixon was one of the few people in Congress who believed Whittaker Chambers, and he wanted to investigate and try to determine if Whittaker Chambers' accusations were true. So he begins this investigation through HUAC, and to make a long story short, HUAC ends up bringing Whittaker Chambers into one of their meetings, one of their hearings, and they put Chambers on. They put him under oath. They ask him to make his accusation public, and he does so. He says that Alger Hiss is a communist, and he knows that because he himself, Whittaker Chambers, was a former communist. Okay, so a bunch of questions made there. HUAC then does what it should, and it brings the Alger Hiss in to answer Whittaker Chambers' accusations. Hiss not only denies that he's a communist, but he also denies that he ever knew Whittaker Chambers. All right, and that basically was the story, and many people believed Alger Hiss over Whittaker Chambers, but not Richard Nixon. So Nixon pursues it even more. He brings Whittaker Chambers back to HUAC, and he begins to press him on more information here. And ultimately, Whittaker Chambers says, I know he was a communist, in fact, and to make it even worse, he is a spy. He was spying for the Soviet Union. And people ask, well, how do you know that? And Whittaker Chambers confesses, I helped him spy. Alger Hiss, he said, would take photographs of secret documents. He would give them to me. I would then take them and hand them off to a Soviet agent in New York City. So I was kind of the courier here. Nixon and HUAC, they asked, well, do you have any examples? He says, well, actually I do. I have the very last set of microfilm that I never delivered to the Soviet agent. And in fact, I have it on my farm in Maryland. I put them in a hollowed out pumpkin. I still have them there if you want to see them. And of course, Nixon says, well, hell yeah, I want to see him. And so they go out to the farm, they go out to the certain corner of his garden, and they find this hollowed out pumpkin, and in there was the last set of microfilm that's going to reveal, in a longabout way, that Alger Hiss indeed had used his own typewriter, and he had not photographed, I guess I should have said, but he actually would take a top secret document, he would actually type the document on his own typewriter, and then that's what he would take a picture of. I'm not sure exactly why, but spies, they do crazy things. But essentially, Whittaker Chambers ended up having the evidence that they needed to convict Hiss not of espionage, not of spying, but of lying to Congress. And so the point of the story is that Richard Nixon is correct. Richard Nixon's political career really takes off at this point. He'll be elected to the Senate in 1948, much because of this. No, 1950, I'm sorry. He was elected to the Senate in 1950 because Richard Nixon becomes a well-known hunter of communists. All right. The second big thing, though, that occurred because of the Alger Hiss is that if HUAC was able to uncover one Soviet agent in the U.S. government, being Alger Hiss, if there's one, there had to be more. And this really adds fuel to this concern that there are more communist agents, and this is going to lead to the rise of people like Senator Joe McCarthy, who we'll talk about in a little bit later. But this really propels Nixon, it propels the Red Scare, and adds more fuel to this chase to uncover who these Soviet agents are. Coming standoff, and then I will finish just before the Korean War begins. I guess that would be a belated spoiler alert. There is a Korean War coming, just so you know. Anyway, this is what we should do. Okay, he was I wouldn't say the man, because that's John Marshall, right? But he definitely was the go-to guy when it comes to all things Soviet. And it's surrounded by a sea of poverty in Eastern Berlin. And so here you're going to have a lot of Eastern German residents. How about that? Okay, or residents of Eastern Berlin, and then you have the Soviet sector of Berlin as well. There are basically three different highways. My pen's not working there. All right, use your imagination. Basically, there are three highways that connected Western Germany to... Now, the Berlin airlift is also going to spur the creation of a military alliance known as NATO. Yes, the Russians still see NATO as a nasty four-letter word. Yeah, anyway. I actually did a paper on this when I was in grad school. I presented a paper to a security conference hosted by Offutt Air Force Base. And I talked about NATO, how NATO expansion should not expand. And that was basically in light of the Ukraine here, it was that fuchsia color, in Georgia here attempting to join NATO. And I argued that it was a big mistake, but you guys can ask me about that sometime in class. I'll share kind of my thesis with you. But yeah, that's the NATO enlargement. Trump has not been a big fan of NATO, mainly because some countries are not paying their fair share of the costs. And that was a point that I raised in my paper, and that was before even Trump was elected. So I think Trump got a hold of my paper and used it to win his 2016 presidential race. If I'd only known. Anyway, the last thing to mention on this, we detected some radiation signatures of a bomb design that looked very similar to the radiation signature of the let's see, it would have been the the first bomb. Is it I can't think straight right now. Not Fat Man, but was it Little? It was the bomb that was dropped over Hiroshima, right? The radiation signature that a bomb leaves behind will tell you what kind of elements were used in the bomb and in the different quantities. And what we detected in these routine air samplings over the Pacific was a signature very similar and almost exact. In fact, it was an exact signature of the bomb that we had dropped over Hiroshima. And now we're going to make a drive into North Korea. The Yalu River is the river that divides North Korea and Manchuria, or I guess China. By late November, China decides to get into the war. They're going to send 200,000 volunteers, quote unquote, into South Korea, into North Korea. That will drive the UN forces back to about 38 degrees. Checker's speech. This was a television address. It's just Nixon in front of a camera where he went on to explain where the money came from and what the money was used for. And what he said is that this money is being used totally for travel for official business. As a senator, he has to travel the state. The budget that he gets from being a U.S. senator is not big enough, he said, for his travels throughout California. And so some donors have given him money to be able to, meet with the people. Okay? But Nixon, at the end of this speech, though, says, well, actually, there's one correction I need to make. There's actually one gift that I got from lobbyists. It's a Cocker Spaniel. That's right, a dog. And his two daughters, named him Checkers. And he closed it by saying, you can say whatever you want about me, but my family loves the dogs, my daughters love the dog, and whatever you say about me, we're going to keep the dog. And people are like, oh, Nixon the dog lover, and now they begin to send telegrams into Nixon or to Eisenhower saying, keep him on the ticket. And so that's where it became known as the Checker speeches, because he referenced his Cocker Spaniel dog in that speech and ended up saving Nixon's political career, at least at that point. The irony, I think, of this is that in 1952, TV saved Nixon's career. But I gotta say, at least looking ahead, you guys aren't there yet, but also it's going to be television that probably destroys Nixon's career. And we'll talk about that in the next unit. All right. In March of 1953, in fact, Joseph Stalin died. I would put R.I.P. here, rest in peace, but I don't care if he rests in peace. He's probably in hell. A year later, the commission finally issues its report, and it concludes that Lee Harvey Oswald alone shot and killed John F. Kennedy. And that second of all, Jack Ruby, who had been a owner-manager of an adult club, acted alone when he shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the police department. People weren't convinced of that, and of course that's why we have other conspiracy theories. The ones that I'm more familiar with, I'll jot these down for you, is that perhaps the mafia was involved. This would be a retaliation to Bobby Kennedy's attack on the mafia as Attorney General, waging war against the different mafia bosses, the deportation of mob bosses as well. Perhaps the crackdown by the Justice Department was enough to prod the mafia into assassinating John F. Kennedy. Who knows? Maybe it was Cuba, Castro, in retaliation for the several attacks on Castro's life. That actually is something that I skipped over, but I think I alluded to it last week in class. This was known as Operation Mongoose. Several assassination attempts against Castro that included poisoning his milkshakes. Part of it included putting a... Oh boy, this is a doozy. The U.S. government believed that Fidel Castro's beard was kind of the source of his attraction to Cuban society. And so we put a chemical in his wetsuit so that when he went scuba diving, this chemical would end up making his hair fall out, and they thought that would kind of, nip his support, so to speak, from the Cuban people. That didn't work either, but ultimately the Kennedy assassination might have been a reaction by the Castro regime as payback. Some believe that it was the military, the U.S. military that is, because of Kennedy's talk about getting out of Vietnam, and the argument being that the government, the military that is, wanted to a better role, an increased role in Southeast Asia. Also, maybe the defense contractors who sell weapons to the U.S. government wanted more. They wanted a war in order to make money. So maybe Johnson would be more likely to support a war. Who knows? I read one crazy theory that it was a phone company that assassinated Kennedy because they wanted to fight deregulation that supposedly Kennedy had supported. I have a theory that I'm in favor of, but I'll actually have to wait and show a video that will deal with that one. First American into orbit was John Glenn, who becomes a U.S. Senator from Ohio. Then ultimately, the Apollo 11 spacecraft allegedly landed on the moon in July of 1969. That's right, I said allegedly. Who knows? December of 1963, from Florida he went to Texas, made several stops in Texas, and then finally on his last stop in Texas was in Dallas. And there on November 22nd is where Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly killed John F. Kennedy. That's right, I said allegedly. Get used to it. Of segregating. Okay, so if we go to let's go to a public school, let's say in Minneapolis, Minnesota. What I've identified here are, again, just a sample of the different groups we're talking about here that are basically responding to that dissatisfaction with the change of pace, or I guess the pace and the change, right? Okay. I don't want to get too technical because again, this is a political science case there more so, but there were 100. Damn highlight again. Quit the pen. There were 100. The MX missile. Do I need to spell MX for you? The MX missile is a missile. Duh. Thank you, Mr. Haindfield. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Okay. I mean, there's a missile already in the air, hitting a right for them, and that's when they realize, oh shoot, we've been identified. All right. That's basically going to propel him as the economy went into the pisser in 1991. George H.W. Bush looked like he was detached, that he wasn't involved, that he was focusing too much on foreign policy and not domestic policy. So now the problem we have here in this election was a ballot being used by many counties. And it was called a butterfly ballot. Okay? I'll show you what it looks like. I'll see if you can figure out how to use it. If you can, then you would not be allowed to live in Florida. Huh? Okay. Here is the butterfly ballot in Florida. Okay. But the real video, the real picture I want to show you is this one. Sorry, is this one right here. This is Mr. Magoo. I'm kidding. This was one of the, and that will stir the development of something called the Tea Party. That will eventually be kind of absorbed by the Republican Party. Yeah, and I really can't see any questions about that either. So I'm going to call it quits there. We're 43 minutes into this, so I told you it'd be a short video, didn't I? And looking over my notes real quick to see if there's anything I forgot. And of course, I'm going to say no, I did not. But if you have other questions, though, from the Bush or Clinton or even Obama years, don't hesitate to ask next time I see you. All right. Adios. Auf Wiedersehen.
With that, I'm going to end you with